She vanished on a Tuesday, left her car running, her phone shattered, her wedding ring on the dashboard like a goodbye. The police called it murder. Nico Caruso called it devastation. But Gianna called it survival. Because when your husband won't listen to your warnings about the vipers in his organization, sometimes you have to die to save him. And sometimes love means fighting from the grave. Welcome back to Mafia Folklore. Before this story begins, tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it? Don't forget to smash that subscribe button, like and share. Now, let's begin. The encrypted file arrived at 2:47 a.m., and Gianna Caruso knew immediately that it would change everything. She sat in the darkness of their bedroom. Nico's side of the bed still made, still cold, still empty for the third night running, and watched the numbers scroll across her laptop screen. Bank transfers, shell companies, names she recognized from dinner parties and holiday gatherings. Names that belonged to men Nico trusted with his life. Names that were selling him out. Her hands trembled as she traced the money trail. $2 million transferred to a rival family in Newark. Another $5 million liquidated from legitimate businesses Nico had spent years building. The pattern was surgical, deliberate, designed to bleed his empire slowly enough that he wouldn't notice until it collapsed. But Gianna noticed. She always noticed the things Nico was too consumed by power to see. Thunder rumbled outside their penthouse windows, and she flinched at the sound. The storm had been building all evening, matching the dread coiling in her stomach. She clicked through another folder, and her breath caught when she saw the final document. A contract. A hit order. Both their names were on it. The deadline was Friday, 3 days away. Gianna closed the laptop with shaking hands and stared at her reflection in the darkened screen. She looked like a ghost already. Pale skin, hollow eyes, expensive silk pajamas that suddenly felt like a shroud. How long had she been living in the shadow of Nico's world, loving a man whose empire demanded more of him than she ever could? She reached for her phone and pulled up his contact. 15 unread messages from her, scattered across the last 72 hours. Can we talk? It's important. Nico, please, I need you to call me back. All ignored. He was in the middle of a turf war with the Castellano family, too focused on protecting territory to see the poison spreading inside his own organization. She'd tried to tell him at breakfast 4 days ago, before everything escalated, but he'd kissed her forehead and promised they'd talk later. Later never came. Now later might mean never. Gianna stood and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching rain streak the glass like tears. The city sprawled below her, glittering and dangerous, beautiful and brutal. Somewhere out there, Nico was making moves, giving orders, trusting men who were planning to put bullets in both their heads. She pressed her palm against the cold glass and made a decision that tasted like grief. If he wouldn't listen to her words, maybe he'd listen to her absence. She spent the next morning preparing like she was planning a funeral. Her own. In the walk-in closet, she pulled out the emergency bag she'd packed years ago, the one Nico didn't know about, the one that held cash, fake IDs, burner phones, and the name of a contact who owed her family a debt. She'd always known this life came with escape routes. She just never imagined she'd use one to escape into danger, instead of away from it. Gianna changed into jeans and a dark sweater, traded her diamond earrings for simple studs, pulled her black hair into a tight bun. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. This wasn't the mafia wife who attended charity galas and smiled through dangerous dinners. This was someone harder. Someone who decided that love meant sacrifice, even when sacrifice looked like disappearing. She recorded the voicemail at 11:15 a.m., sitting in her car in the underground garage. Her voice shook, but the words were clear. "Nico, it's me. I know you're busy. I know you think I don't understand, but you need to listen. There's something inside your organization. Someone close to you is moving money, making deals with your enemies. I have proof. Vincent and Sal. I think they're planning something. Please, please call me back. I love you. I need you to know that whatever happens, I love you." She ended the call and stared at the phone in her hand, willing it to ring, willing him to prove her wrong, to finally hear her. Silence. Gianna set the phone on the passenger seat and started the engine. She drove to the location she'd scouted 2 weeks ago, a deserted stretch of road near the docks, where accidents happened and evidence disappeared. She parked the car, left the engine running, took her wedding ring off with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The platinum band caught the gray afternoon light, and she thought about the day Nico slipped it on her finger. Forever, he'd promised. Nothing comes between us. She placed the ring carefully on the dashboard, a goodbye without words. Then she took a hammer from her bag and destroyed her phone with 3 sharp strikes. Glass and circuitry scattered across the seat like shattered promises. She spread the evidence carefully, struggled to make it look real, to make it look like violence had found her here. When she was finished, Gianna stepped out of the car and didn't look back. The rain started as she walked away, washing the city clean, turning everything gray and forgettable. She pulled up the hood of her jacket and disappeared into the kind of storm that erased footprints. Behind her, the car idled on the empty road, door hanging open, phone destroyed, wedding ring gleaming like a final goodbye. Have you ever had to choose between being heard and being safe? Tell us in the comments section. By the time the police found it 3 hours later, Gianna Caruso was already a ghost. And somewhere across the city, in a warehouse negotiation that was going sideways, Nico Caruso's phone buzzed with a voicemail he was too busy to answer. Have you ever had to make an impossible choice to protect someone you love, even when they couldn't see the danger? Tell us in the comments section. The call came at 9:43 p.m., and it shattered Nico Caruso's world into pieces he'd never be able to put back together. He was in his office at the social club, reviewing territory maps with Vincent Russo and Sal DeLuca, his consigliere and underboss, the 2 men he'd built his empire with, the 2 men he trusted more than his own reflection. The turf war with the Castellanos was escalating, and they were planning a decisive move when his phone lit up with an unknown number. Normally, he'd ignore it, but something in his gut twisted. "Caruso," he answered, voice clipped. "Mr. Caruso, this is Detective Morrison with the NYPD. I need you to come down to the precinct immediately. It's about your wife." The room went silent. Vincent and Sal looked up from the maps, concern flickering across their faces. Faces Nico had known for 15 years, faces that had become as familiar as his own. "What about my wife?" The words came out cold, controlled. But his hand gripped the phone hard enough to crack the case. "Sir, we found her vehicle abandoned near the Brooklyn docks. There are signs of a struggle. We need you to come identify some personal effects." Nico's world tilted. He was moving before he realized it, grabbing his coat, his keys, his gun. Vincent stood, hand on his shoulder. "Boss, we'll come with you. Whatever this is—" "No." The word was granite. "Handle the Castellano situation. I'll deal with this." He didn't remember the drive to the precinct, didn't remember parking, walking through the doors, being led down fluorescent-lit hallways that smelled like old coffee and desperation. He only remembered the evidence bag they placed on the table in front of him. Her wedding ring. the platinum band he'd chosen because it matched her eyes in certain light. The one she never took off, not even to sleep. "We found this on the dashboard," Detective Morrison said gently. "Along with the destroyed cell phone and signs of forced entry. The car was still running. We're treating this as a possible abduction or—" "Don't!" Nico's voice was barely a whisper. "Don't say it." But the detective's eyes said everything his mouth didn't. The blood they'd found, the shattered glass, the violence written into every detail of that abandoned car. Nico picked up the ring with trembling fingers. It was cold, so cold, and he thought about the warmth of her hand, the way she'd twist it absently when she was nervous, the way it caught the light when she reached for him in the dark. "Mr. Caruso, when was the last time you spoke to your wife?" He tried to remember. Days blurred together when you were fighting a war. "3 days ago, maybe 4. I've been dealing with business." "Did she seem distressed? Afraid? Did she mention any threats?" Threats. The word echoed in his skull, and suddenly he remembered her messages. The ones he'd been too busy to read. The calls he'd sent to voicemail. His hands moved on autopilot, pulling out his phone, navigating to his voicemail. One unheard message. Timestamp 11:15 a.m. Today. He pressed play, and Gianna's voice filled the sterile room like a ghost. "Nico, it's me. I know you're busy. I know you think I don't understand. But you need to listen. There's something inside your organization. Someone close to you is moving money, making deals with your enemies. I have proof. Vincent and Sal? I think they're planning something. Please call me back. I love you. I need you to know that whatever happens, I love you." The message ended, and the silence that followed was deafening. Nico played it again. And again. And again. Each word was a knife. Each plea was his failure. Each "I love you" was a chance he'd thrown away because he was too consumed by power, too focused on territory and respect and all the things that suddenly meant nothing. Vincent and Sal, his closest allies, his brothers. The men who were in his office right now, probably celebrating that he'd left them alone with his plans, his contacts, his empire. "Mr. Caruso?" The detective's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Are you all right?" "All right." The word was a joke. His wife was gone, taken, hurt, maybe worse, and he'd ignored her final warning. He'd been so busy protecting his empire that he'd left her defenseless against the vipers inside it. Nico stood abruptly, pocketing her ring and his phone. "I need to go." "Sir, we need you to answer some questions. Later." His voice was ice and fury. "I'll call you later." He walked out of the precinct into rain that felt like the sky was mourning with him. He sat in his car and listened to her voicemail 7 more times, memorizing every inflection, every breath, every tremor of fear he'd been too arrogant to hear. Then he called Vincent. "Boss, everything okay with Gianna?" The concern in Vincent's voice sounded so genuine, so perfectly performed. "No," Nico said quietly. "Nothing's okay. I'm coming back to the club. We need to talk." He ended the call and sat in the darkness, rain drumming on the roof like funeral drums. Somewhere in his memory, Gianna laughed, the sound from their wedding day, pure and bright and full of hope. He remembered dancing with her, promising her safety, promising her forever. He'd broken both promises. Nico started the engine, but he didn't drive back to the club. Instead, he went home, to the penthouse that suddenly felt like a mausoleum. He walked through rooms filled with her presence, books half read on the nightstand, coffee cups still in the sink, her perfume lingering in the air like a goodbye. He found himself in their closet, surrounded by her clothes, her shoes, her life. He pulled down one of her scarves, soft cashmere and deep blue, and pressed it to his face, breathing in the scent of her. And for the first time in 20 years, Nico Caruso broke. He slid down the wall, scarf clutched in his fists, and let the grief tear through him. Great, wrenching sobs that shook his entire body. The mafia boss, the untouchable king of the city, reduced to a man who'd lost everything that mattered because he'd been too blind to see it slipping away. Her voicemail played on repeat in his mind. Please, please call me back. I love you. I'm sorry, he whispered into the empty closet, into the ghost of her presence. God, Gianna, I'm so sorry. But sorry wouldn't bring her back. Sorry wouldn't undo the ignored calls, the missed warnings, the 3 days he'd chosen war over her voice. Nico wiped his eyes and stood, something hardening in his chest where his heart used to be. If she was gone, if those bastards had taken her from him, then he would burn his empire to ash to find the truth. And if Vincent and Sal were responsible, he would make them wish they'd never been born. He left the closet, left the penthouse, left behind the man who'd ignored his wife's final message. The man who walked out into the storm was something darker, something with nothing left to lose. Meanwhile, across the city, in a safe house that smelled like mildew and regret, Gianna Caruso sat in front of a laptop screen watching security footage of the precinct entrance. She saw Nico walk out, saw the devastation written into every line of his body, saw him sit in his car for 20 minutes before driving away. Her hand drifted to her bare ring finger, touching the ghost of the platinum band. I'm sorry, she whispered to the screen, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, baby, but this is the only way. She closed the laptop and pulled up the files she'd stolen, the proof of Vincent and Sal's betrayal, the money trails, the communications with rival families. Everything Nico needed to see but wouldn't believe unless she forced his hand. Dying was easy. Staying dead long enough to save him, that was the hard part. Gianna wiped her tears and got back to work, hunting the men who wanted them both buried, while her husband grieved a ghost. Love, she was learning, sometimes meant letting someone mourn you, even when you were still breathing. Gianna had forgotten what silence felt like until she became a ghost. The safe house was a studio apartment in Astoria, rented under a dead woman's name, paid for in cash that couldn't be traced. Bare walls. Single window overlooking a fire escape. A mattress on the floor and a folding table that held her laptop. 3 burner phones and a gun she prayed she'd never have to use. She'd been dead for 4 days, and every minute felt like drowning. At night, she monitored Nico through hacked security feeds and reports from the one contact she trusted, a retired cop named Teresa who owed Gianna's father a life debt. Teresa fed her information in careful drops. Nico had stopped sleeping, stopped eating. Spent his nights in their closet or listening to her voicemail on repeat. During the day, he'd become something terrifying, interrogating his own men with cold precision, tearing through financial records, hunting for the conspiracy she'd warned him about. He was looking for her killers. He didn't know he was looking in the right direction. Gianna traced another money transfer on her screen. Vincent Russo, moving funds through a shell company to the Castellano family. $2 million, exchanged for information on Nico's weapons shipments. The pattern was clear now. Vincent and Sal had been selling Nico out for months, positioning themselves to take over once the Castellanos eliminated him. She'd been collateral damage they were willing to accept. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, aching to send Nico everything. But it wasn't enough yet. She needed proof that would hold up, that couldn't be denied or explained away. She needed to catch them in the act. A notification pinged on one of the burner phones. Teresa. He's moving tonight, following a lead on V. Be careful. Gianna's heart lurched. She pulled up the security feed from Nico's social club and watched him emerge, dressed in all black, gun visible at his hip. Even through the grainy footage, she could see the change in him. The way he moved like a predator. The way violence sat on his shoulders like a familiar coat. This was the man the city feared. This was also the man who'd cried in their closet, clutching her scarf. She grabbed her own jacket and gun, heading for the door. If Nico was going after Vincent tonight, she needed to be there. Not to interfere, but to make sure he didn't walk into a trap. The warehouse district was industrial silence and shadows. Gianna positioned herself on a rooftop across from the building where Vincent had a side office, a place he used for meetings that didn't make it into official records. She watched through binoculars as Nico arrived alone, slipping through a side entrance with practiced ease. Stupid, beautiful, reckless man, going in alone when he should have brought an army. She was about to move when another figure emerged from the shadows, Sal DeLuca, followed by 3 armed men. They entered through the same door, and Gianna's blood went cold. An ambush. Her body moved before her mind caught up. She descended the fire escape 3 rungs at a time, hit the ground running, crossed the empty street with her hood up and her gun drawn. The side door was still unlocked, sloppy or intentional, and she slipped inside to a maze of corridors lit by flickering fluorescents. Voices echoed from somewhere ahead. Nico's voice, low and dangerous. Vincent's, smooth as poisoned honey. Don't know what you think you found, boss, but you're way off base here. Am I? Nico's voice was granite. Then explain the transfers. Explain the meetings with Castellano's nephew. Explain why my wife's last message warned me about you before someone killed her. Silence. Then Vincent, colder now. Gianna was paranoid. You know that. The stress of this life. Don't! The word was a gunshot. Don't say her name! Gianna crept closer, using the shadows, her heart hammering so loud she was sure they'd hear it. She rounded a corner and saw them through a doorway. Nico facing Vincent and Sal, outnumbered but unafraid. The 3 armed men formed a loose semicircle, hands near their weapons. This was it. The moment Vincent and Sal had been engineering. Get Nico alone, make it look like the Castellanos did it, take over his empire while playing the grieving loyalists. Vincent sighed, almost sad. You were supposed to die with her, you know, quick, clean. But you made this complicated by surviving, by digging. Now we have to do this the hard way. Sal drew his gun. So did the 3 soldiers. Nico didn't move, but Gianna saw his hand inch toward his weapon. You killed her! We had to, Vincent said simply. She knew too much. And honestly, Nico, you were spending too much time playing house, getting soft. The organization needed stronger leadership. Needed? Nico's voice dropped to a whisper, past tense. Everything happened at once. Nico drew, fired, dropped one of the soldiers before anyone could blink. Vincent and Sal scattered. Gunfire erupted, deafening in the enclosed space. Nico dove behind a metal desk, returning fire with precision born from decades in this life. But he was outnumbered, pinned down, bleeding from a graze on his shoulder. Gianna didn't think, didn't plan, just moved. She came through the side entrance, fired twice, dropped another soldier, sent the 3rd diving for cover. In the chaos, Nico's head snapped toward her. eyes widening in recognition even through the smoke and darkness. She saw the moment he knew, saw his entire world reorganize itself around the impossible truth. Gianna! Her name on his lips was a prayer and a question and devastation all at once. Down! She screamed. Vincent fired at her. She rolled, came up shooting, felt a bullet tear through her side like fire and ice. The pain was blinding, but she kept moving, kept firing, giving Nico the opening he needed. He took it. The next 30 seconds were violence and survival. Nico and Gianna moving like they'd choreographed it, covering each other's blind spots. Years of unspoken understanding translated into lethal efficiency. Vincent went down with a bullet in the leg, screaming. Sal tried to run and caught 2 rounds in the back. The last soldier dropped his weapon, hands raised, and Nico let him run. Then silence. Just their breathing, harsh and ragged, and the ringing aftermath of gunfire. Gianna pressed her hand to her side, felt warm blood seeping through her fingers. The adrenaline was fading, and the pain was becoming real. She swayed, caught herself against the wall. Nico crossed the space between them in 3 strides. Up close, she could see everything the security feeds had hidden, the hollows under his eyes, the grief carved into his face, the way his hands shook as they reached for her. You're alive. His voice cracked on the words. You're alive. You're here. You're bleeding. She managed, trying to smile, but alive. His hands found the wound, applied pressure, gentle despite their trembling. Why? The question was agony. Why would you? I thought you were dead, Gianna. I thought I'd lost you. I know. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with the grime and smoke. I know, baby. I'm sorry. But you wouldn't listen. You never listen when you're in the middle of a war, and they were going to kill us both. This was the only way to make you see. So you disappeared. Understanding and hurt warred in his eyes. You let me believe you were murdered. Let me grieve you. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry, but I had to protect you, even if it meant... He kissed her, desperate and fierce and tasting like salt and smoke and 4 days of mourning. His hands cradled her face like she was made of glass, like she might disappear again if he let go. She kissed him back with everything she had, ignoring the pain in her side, the blood on her clothes, the bodies on the floor around them. When they finally broke apart, his forehead pressed against hers. You died, he said softly. You were dead, and I didn't save you. I ignored your calls, your messages, your warnings, and you were dead. I wasn't, though. She touched his face, traced the new lines grief had carved there. I was fighting for us, from the shadows, but fighting. I always fight for us. You shouldn't have to. Raw pain in those words. You should never have to disappear to make me hear you. Behind them, Vincent groaned, trying to crawl toward a dropped gun. Nico didn't even look. Just fired once, ended the threat, turned back to Gianna like nothing else existed. We need to get you to a doctor, he said, looking at her wound. We need to get somewhere safe first, she countered. They're not the only traitors. This conspiracy goes deeper than just them. Then we go to ground. Nico scooped her up carefully, cradling her against his chest. Together this time. No more disappearing. No more dying. You stay where I can see you, where I can protect you. Where we can protect each other, she corrected. He looked down at her, and something shifted in his expression. Respect mixing with the love that had always been there. Where we protect each other, he agreed. When was the last time you truly listened to someone you love? Not just heard them, but listened. Tell us in the comment section. As Nico carried her out of the warehouse into the rain-washed night, Gianna felt her wedding ring pressing against her palm. She'd carried it with her every day since leaving it on that dashboard, a talisman against the loneliness of being dead. Now, Nico took it gently, slipped it back on her finger where it belonged. "Never again," he said quietly. "I swear to you, Gianna, I will never ignore you again. Never choose anything over hearing your voice." She believed him, because love, the deepest kind, was built in the spaces between death and resurrection, in the moment when you finally understood what you'd almost lost. The safe house Nico took them to wasn't one of his. It belonged to an old friend who'd left the life years ago, a man named Paulie who lived in the Catskills and asked no questions when Nico called at 3 a.m. asking for sanctuary. Gianna spent the first 12 hours drifting in and out of consciousness, while a retired mob doctor stitched her side and pumped her full of antibiotics. When she finally woke, clear-headed and aching, she found Nico sitting beside the bed, her laptop open on his lap, reading through every file she'd compiled. "How long have I been out?" Her voice was rough. He looked up, and the relief in his eyes was profound. 18 hours. Doc said you'd be fine, but... He stopped, swallowed hard. "Seeing you unconscious again, even knowing you were just healing, I'm okay." She reached for his hand, squeezed. "We're okay?" "Are we?" He turned the laptop toward her, and she saw the spreadsheets, the communication logs, the evidence she'd spent weeks gathering. Vincent and Sal weren't working alone. There are 6 others, guys I've known for years, all involved in selling me out. They've been planning this for months, Gianna, waiting for the right moment to stage a coup. She struggled to sit up, wincing at the pull of stitches. "I know. That's why I needed more time. I had to map the entire network before we could move. If we'd only taken down Vincent and Sal, the others would have scattered or retaliated." "And you were doing this alone?" Not a question, a realization that clearly hurt him. "While I was fighting a war you thought was with the Castellanos?" She finished gently. "When the real war was inside your own house." Nico closed the laptop and scrubbed his hands over his face. He looked exhausted, haunted, like a man who'd seen the foundation of his world crack open. "I built this empire on loyalty, on brotherhood, and they saw an opportunity." Gianna touched his cheek, turned his face toward her. "This isn't your fault. Greed makes people betray anything, even bonds they claimed were sacred. But if I'd listened to you..." "You're listening now." She held his gaze. "That's what matters. Now we finish this together." He nodded slowly, then reached into his jacket and pulled out a USB drive. "I grabbed this from Vincent's office before we left. Encrypted files he was trying to delete when you showed up. I haven't cracked it yet." Gianna took the drive, her mind already working through possibilities. "I can break his encryption. Give me an hour." "You need to rest." "I need to protect us." She was already reaching for the laptop. "Rest comes after we survive." He looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression stopped him. Maybe he finally understood. She wasn't the woman who stayed safe while he fought battles. She was the woman who fought beside him, even when he couldn't see her doing it. "Okay," he said quietly. "But I'm staying right here." "Good." She opened the laptop and plugged in the drive. "Because I'm never letting you out of my sight again either." It took her 43 minutes to break Vincent's encryption. What they found made the betrayal so much worse. "Oh, God," Gianna whispered, scrolling through messages that dated back 2 years. Nico, this goes back to before the Castellano War even started. They manufactured it. Vincent and his crew created the conflict to keep you distracted while they dismantled everything from the inside. Nico read over her shoulder, his body going rigid with each new revelation. The staged attacks blamed on the Castellanos, the shipments mysteriously going missing, the informants who'd fed him false intelligence. All of it orchestrated by the men he'd trusted most. "There's more," Gianna said, her blood running cold. "They're planning something for tonight. A meeting with the other conspirators and someone from the Castellano family. They think we're dead or scattered. They're dividing up your territory like I'm already buried." Nico's voice was ice. "Where?" "The old social club on Mulberry Street. Midnight." She looked at the clock. 8 p.m. 4 hours. "It's a trap location, Nico. They chose it because it's exposed, easy to lock down. If we go in..." "We have to go in." He was already moving, checking his weapons. "This is our chance to end it. All of them in one place, caught red-handed making deals with my enemies." "It's suicide." Gianna stood, ignoring the screaming pain in her side. "We're 2 people against at least 8, maybe more if the Castellanos bring soldiers. And I'm injured. Then I go alone." "Like hell you do." She grabbed her own gun from the nightstand, checked the magazine with practiced ease. "We're not splitting up again, not ever. But we need backup. Someone we can trust." Nico was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then, "Teresa, your contact, is she still on your side? She's not in the life anymore. But she knows people who are, people who owe her, people who might still believe in something beyond greed." He turned to her, and Gianna saw the man she'd married. Brilliant, strategic, capable of inspiring loyalty in those who truly knew him. "We make the calls. We gather everyone we can trust, and it won't be many. And we walk into that meeting prepared to burn it all down." "Your empire," Gianna said softly. "Everything you built means nothing without you." He crossed to her, cupped her face in his hands. "I chose the empire over you once. Never again. If we have to destroy it to survive, to be together, then we burn it to the ground and start over." She searched his eyes and found only certainty. Only love that had been tested by the worst kind of fire and emerged transformed. "Okay," she whispered. "We make the calls, we gather the loyal ones, and we end this tonight." By 11:30 p.m., they had assembled a small army of the last honest men in Nico's organization. 7 soldiers who'd been with him since the beginning, who remembered when loyalty meant something. Teresa and 2 of her old police contacts, who were willing to look the other way if it meant cleaning corruption from the streets. And Gianna herself, strapped with weapons and wearing a vest despite her injury, refusing to stay behind. They approached the social club like shadows, positioning themselves in the surrounding buildings, covering every exit. Nico and Gianna would walk in the front door, visible, vulnerable, bait for the trap. "If this goes wrong," Nico said as they stood in the alley across the street. "If they get past me." "They won't." Gianna checked her weapon one final time. "Because I'll be right beside you, and we're both walking out of this, together." He pulled her close, careful of her injury, and kissed her forehead. "I love you. I should have said it more. Should have shown you every single day that you were more important than any of this. You're showing me now." She touched his face. "And after tonight, we'll have the rest of our lives for you to keep showing me." They crossed the street hand in hand. And Gianna felt the weight of every choice that had led them here. Her staged death, his grief, the betrayal that had almost destroyed them both. but she also felt his hand in hers, warm and alive, and finally listening. The door to the social club was unlocked. They walked in together, and all conversation stopped. 8 men sat around the table. The conspirators Gianna had identified, plus 2 she didn't recognize wearing Castellano colors. Everyone froze, faces draining of color as they stared at 2 ghosts who weren't supposed to be breathing. "Gentlemen," Nico said calmly, his voice carrying absolute authority. "I believe you're having a meeting about my territory, without an invitation." One of the conspirators, Anthony, who'd been Nico's driver for 10 years, went for his gun. Gianna shot him in the shoulder before he cleared leather. "Next person who moves dies," she said quietly. "And trust me, I've already died once this week. I have nothing left to lose." The room was a tableau of terror and calculation. The conspirators weighing their odds, the Castellano men realizing they'd been set up, everyone suddenly aware that the balance of power had shifted in a way they couldn't have anticipated. "Here's what's going to happen," Nico continued, moving into the room with Gianna at his side. "You're going to sit very still while my wife, yes, very much alive, as you can see, explains exactly what you've been doing. And then you're going to tell me why I shouldn't put bullets in every single one of you right now." "Boss, this isn't—" one of them started. "Shut up, Michael." Nico's voice could have cut glass. "You lost the right to call me that when you sold me out to the Castellanos, when you planned to kill my wife, when you decided 30 pieces of silver was worth more than 15 years of brotherhood." Gianna moved to the laptop one of them had opened, plugged in Vincent's USB drive. "Everything's here. Every transaction, every communication, every lie you told while pretending to be loyal. And copies have already been sent to the commission, to your families, to everyone who needs to know exactly what you are." "You're finished," one of the Castellano men said, finding his courage. "You walk in here with your dead wife and think you can—" The door behind them burst open. Nico's loyal soldiers poured in, weapons drawn, along with Teresa and her people. The conspirators were surrounded, outnumbered, caught in a trap of their own making. But one of them, Frankie, who'd always been unstable, made a desperate play. He grabbed for a gun hidden under the table, brought it up toward Nico. Gianna saw it happening in slow motion. Saw Nico's attention split between multiple threats. Saw the barrel coming up, the finger tightening on the trigger. She didn't hesitate. She threw herself in front of Nico just as the gun fired. The bullet hit her vest, driving the air from her lungs and reopening her side wound. She went down hard, pain exploding through her entire body. Heard Nico's roar of rage, heard gunfire erupting, heard chaos and violence and the sound of her own ragged breathing. Then his hands were on her, rolling her over, checking for blood. "Gianna, stay with me. Don't you dare, don't you—" "Vest," she gasped. "Just vest, and maybe some new stitches." Relief and fury warred in his expression. Around them the room had been secured, conspirators disarmed, zip-tied, on their knees. Frankie was dead. The Castellano men were being detained by Teresa's people. It was over. They'd won. But as Nico cradled her against his chest, both of them bleeding and exhausted and alive, Gianna realized the victory tasted like ash, because winning meant confronting just how close they'd come to losing everything. How fragile the empire was. How many people would betray you for nothing more than greed? "Get her out of here," Nico ordered his loyal men. "Get her to the doctor, now." "You're coming too," Gianna insisted, seeing the blood seeping through his jacket from the earlier graze that had reopened in the fight. "After I finish this—" "No." She grabbed his collar, pulled him down to meet her eyes. We finish it together, or we don't finish it at all. That's the deal now. No more splitting up. No more handling things alone. Together, Nico. Or I swear I'll stage my death again just to make a point. Despite everything, he almost smiled. You're impossible. I'm yours. She touched his face. And you're mine. So we walk out of here together, we heal together, and we decide what comes next together. Understand? He looked at the conspirators on their knees, at the empire he'd built being held together by the thinnest threads of loyalty. Then he looked back at Gianna, bleeding, fierce, alive, and made his choice. Together, he agreed. They left the social club hand in hand, leaving the cleanup to the loyal ones who remained. Behind them, an empire teetered on the edge of collapse. But in front of them, there was only each other. And for the first time in their marriage, that was enough. The safe house by the water wasn't much. A small cabin 2 hours north of the city, surrounded by pine trees and the kind of silence that felt like a different world. Polly had offered it without questions, told them to stay as long as they needed, then disappeared back to his quiet life where the biggest danger was bears, not bullets. Gianna woke on the third morning to sunlight streaming through gauze curtains and the smell of coffee. Her side ached, new stitches holding together what the bullet and violence had torn open, but it was a manageable pain, the kind that reminded you that you'd survived. She found Nico on the porch, staring out at the lake with a mug in his hands. He'd showered, shaved, looked almost human again except for the weight in his eyes. Documents were spread across the small table beside him. Contracts, legal papers, things with official seals. You're supposed to be resting, he said without turning around. So are you. She settled into the chair beside him, accepting the coffee he'd already poured for her. What are all these? The end of an empire. He gestured to the papers. Liquidation documents, sale contracts for the legitimate businesses, transfer of territory to the families who stayed loyal, letters to the commission explaining my retirement. Gianna's breath caught. Nico, I'm done, Gianna. He finally looked at her, and his eyes were clear. Certain. I built that world on loyalty and brotherhood, and it rotted from the inside. Vincent, Sal, 6 others, men I would have died for. They sold me out for money. If the foundation is that corrupt, the whole structure needs to come down. That empire was your life, she said softly. No. He reached for her hand, laced their fingers together. You're my life. You were always my life. I was just too stupid and arrogant to see it. I let you become invisible while I chased power and respect and all these things that meant nothing when I thought you were dead. Tears pricked her eyes. You don't have to give up everything. I'm not giving up. I'm choosing. He brought her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles. I'm choosing you over the empire. I'm choosing a life where I answer your calls, where I listen when you're afraid, where you never have to disappear to make me see you. Gianna looked at the documents, the dissolution of everything he'd spent 20 years building. What will you do? What will we do? He corrected. Because we're in this together now, remember? No more decisions made alone. Okay. She smiled through the tears. What will we do? Nico gestured to another stack of papers. These ones looked different, hopeful somehow. Polly's been telling me about legitimate investment opportunities up here. Real estate, small businesses, things that don't require soldiers or violence. We'd have to start small, build something clean from the ground up. It wouldn't be the same as... It would be better, Gianna interrupted, because it would be ours. Really ours. not built on fear or blood or loyalty that can be bought. You'd be okay with that? Vulnerability in his question. Small cabin instead of penthouse? Quiet life instead of the city? Trading in the mafia wife title for just being my wife? She laughed, and it felt like the first real laughter in weeks. Nico, I staged my own death and lived in a moldy safe house eating takeout for 4 days while hunting conspirators. I think I can handle a cabin? He pulled her carefully onto his lap, mindful of her injury, and wrapped his arms around her. They sat like that for a long time, watching sunlight dance on the water, listening to birds instead of sirens, breathing air that didn't taste like violence. I'm sorry, he whispered into her hair, for every ignored call, for every time I made you feel invisible, for not protecting you the way you protected me. You're protecting me now. She turned to face him. By choosing this, by choosing us. Always. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips, soft kisses that tasted like promises. From now on, always. They spent the next week healing and planning in equal measure. Gianna's stitches came out, and the angry red wound became a scar she'd carry forever, a reminder of the night she threw herself in front of a bullet for the man she loved. Nico's shoulder healed, and the grief lines in his face softened as he slowly transformed from mafia boss to just a man, a husband, someone who woke up early to make coffee and asked her opinion on investment proposals and learned how to be present in a way he'd never allowed himself before. They walked by the lake every evening, talking through everything that had happened. The betrayal, her staged death, his grief, the violence, and the choice they'd made in that warehouse to fight together. Some conversations were painful, reopening emotional wounds that needed air to heal. Others were hopeful, dreaming about the life they could build in the space between who they'd been and who they wanted to become. On the 7th day, Teresa called. The commission accepted Nico's retirement, she reported. Territory's been divided. The conspirators have been dealt with according to their laws. You're free and clear, as long as you stay out of the city for a while. Let the dust settle. We're not coming back, Gianna said, looking at Nico across the cabin. Not to that life. Good. Teresa's voice was warm. You two deserve better than blood and shadows. Be happy, Gianna. That's the best revenge. After she hung up, Gianna found Nico on the porch again, their spot now, where they did their best thinking and healing. She slipped her arms around him from behind, rested her cheek against his back. It's really over, she said. The old life is over. He turned, pulled her close. The new one is just beginning. 3 months later, they stood in front of a small house with a lake view and a garden that needed work. The papers were signed. The house was theirs. No shell companies, no hidden owners, just their names on a deed for a piece of land that nobody would try to steal or burn down. Gianna watched Nico carry boxes inside, and her heart felt too full for her chest. He caught her staring and grinned, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. What? He asked. I'm just thinking, she said. About that voicemail, the one you didn't answer. His smile faded slightly, old guilt flickering across his expression. Gianna, I'm not bringing it up to hurt you. She crossed to him, took his hands. I'm bringing it up because it saved us. My warning didn't reach you the way I intended, but it reached you eventually, and it made you see what mattered. Made both of us see. You shouldn't have had to die for me to listen, but I didn't die. She squeezed his hands. I survived. We survived, and now we get to build something beautiful in the place where everything fell apart. Nico pulled her into his arms, held her like she was the only solid thing in a shifting world. "I love you," he said into her hair. "And I promise, every day for the rest of our lives, I will answer when you call. I will listen when you speak. I will see you, Gianna. Really see you." "I know you will." She tilted her face up for a kiss. "Because we both know what it costs when you don't." They kissed on the porch of their new house, surrounded by boxes and possibility, and the kind of peace that only comes after surviving the worst. When they broke apart, Nico pulled something from his pocket. Her wedding ring, which she'd stopped wearing during the healing process because her fingers had swollen. "I think it's time," he said softly, slipping it back onto her finger. "To make new promises. Better ones." The ring settled into place like it had never left, like it was always meant to come back to this moment, this choice, this deliberate act of choosing each other over everything else. "New promises?" Gianna agreed. "Like, I promise to always tell you when I'm afraid. Even when you're busy saving the world." "I promise to never be too busy to hear it," Nico countered. "And I promise to never let the empire, any empire, matter more than coming home to you." "I promise to trust that you're listening," she said. "And to stop disappearing when I feel invisible." "I promise to make sure you never feel invisible again." He kissed her ring finger, right where the platinum band caught the afternoon light. "And I promise that whatever we build here, it's ours. Equal partners. In everything." "Equal partners," she echoed. "In survival? In business? In love?" "Especially in love." They stood on that porch, holding each other as the sun began to set over the lake, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Somewhere in the city they'd left behind, empires rose and fell. Loyalties shifted like sand. Violence bred more violence. But here, in this quiet place where birds sang and water lapped gently at the shore, two people who'd survived betrayal and grief and their own mistakes were building something different. Something that couldn't be bought or stolen or corrupted. Something as simple and profound as a man answering when his wife called. Love requires sacrifice, but it also requires presence. What's one way you can show up more fully for someone you love? Tell us in the comment section. 6 months after that, on a morning when frost painted the windows and coffee steamed in the kitchen they'd renovated together, Gianna's phone rang. She looked at the screen, then at Nico, who was making breakfast. He met her eyes and smiled. "Are you going to answer it? Are you going to stop what you're doing and listen if I need you?" He turned off the stove, crossed to her, took her free hand in his. "Always." She answered the call. Just a friend checking in, nothing urgent. But Nico stayed beside her anyway, holding her hand, being present, proving with every small action that the promises they'd made weren't just words. When she hung up, he pulled her close and kissed her temple. "See?" he murmured. "Easy." And it was. After everything they'd survived, the betrayal, the staged death, the bullets and blood, and choosing each other over an empire, the simple act of being present was the easiest thing in the world. Gianna had left him a message that could have saved them both, and he'd ignored it. But in the wreckage of that failure, they'd found something worth more than any empire. A love that listened, that stayed, that chose presence over power every single day. She vanished on a Tuesday, left her car running, her phone shattered, her wedding ring on the dashboard like a goodbye. But she came back on a Thursday, alive and fierce, and refusing to let love die in silence. And Nico Caruso, who'd once been too consumed by his empire to hear her voice, spent the rest of his life making sure he never missed another word. Thank you for watching this story until the end. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and click on the next video. It is darker, deeper, and even more unforgettable. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a new story, and comment your country or city. Your support helps us create more contents like this.